going on, everybody? Here we are. This is locally sourced primary night. Woo! See how this goes. I have no idea. It could go terribly. It could go wonderfully. Data's already coming in, and we're going to talk about it. In all likelihood, many people will come and go throughout the course of this stream. It's mostly going to be like a conversation that's happening at a party that you kind of walk by every once in a while, and sometimes you get real sucked in, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I gotta go. That's going to kind of be what this is like. But it's okay because I think it'll be fun anyways, and I know we're going to talk about quality stuff. So, with all of that being said, I am very excited to bring on right now David Matthew and Jonah Wheeler. Guys, welcome. Here we are.
Hey, what it is. Good evening, gentlemen.
We have made it, and also joining the room right now with us, Hannah Spaulding is coming in. Hannah's connecting to audio right now, so Hannah will be on in just a moment. But we're, yeah, man, this is gonna be fun. Just so everybody knows who we're with right now, David is everybody here is a previous guest, which is awesome. I really love that y'all felt like coming back and joining me for this nonsense. So right now in the top left is David Matthew. He is a member of the New Hampshire Progressive Coalition. And in our bottom left corner is Jonah Wheeler. He is a frequent contributor and co-host of Deep Dive here on Locally Sourced. And we have Hannah Spaulding, who is the co-chair of New Hampshire DSA, Southern New Hampshire DSA. So everybody welcome. So, welcome to the stream. This is fun.
Hey.
So, hey, Hannah.
Hey.
Yeah. No, you guys can feel free to talk amongst yourselves. How's everybody's day been?
Good. Yeah, I had to vote at like 7:30 because I had to do it before work. I think I technically would have made it, but I was like, I don't want to risk it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my partner Dua and I, we showed up right when they opened around 8, and it was actually jam packed. I was like, man, everyone had the same idea, but hopefully that means it's going to be good turnout. We'll see.
I know. Yeah. Hopefully.
I managed to get over it like around 10 o'clock, and I was lucky they were pretty empty at my polling location at the time, but I could see it getting swamped. I don't know, the people in our town are really like wild about safety measures. So
that's through Conan High School was one of the polling places that looked pretty swamped at like 5:30.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or it was like 4:30 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I kept hearing about like town moderators who were like doing stuff, but they were on the ballot, and I don't know too much about that specifically, but I wouldn't surprise me. It happens. It's not great. It probably also depends where you're at.
Right. Yeah. And you kind of have a small group of people who are like involved in local politics who tend to be the people who run.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that has been a conflict before. Like I remember just even in local selectmen races, they'd need someone to man the polls all day, but one of them couldn't do it because they were on the ballot. So it was, I don't know, maybe we're better about it than other places, but I did send over in the chat, there's a link to all of the sort of like the live polling data from the New York Times. And actually something I will do is I'll post it in the YouTube live chat as well, just so that anybody who's watching can check it out there. But yeah, so this is going to be live updating, I guess. I don't know how often they do it. Last time I checked it, they were like, we updated it 1 minute ago. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, I remember checking it on primary night back in, feels like ages ago, February. And it was so funny. My town took weirdly long to get the results. And so I waited several days. And then it was like Klobuchar won. And I was like, all that time I waited for Klobuchar.
Wah, wah.
I was like, wow, betrayed by my town.
Yeah, I was actually very surprised with how well Klobuchar performed here in New Hampshire. I mean, she really, I guess she got a big boost from that debate, which was kind of universally heralded. But I was a little bit surprised by how well she did here.
Yeah,
it kind of made sense to me. It seems like there's a lot of people like the Gene Deitch crowd, like kind of like they're good on a lot of the issues, and they're good if they're in the state house and like you can work with, or state senate, and you can work with them, but like they are those Klobuchar Democrats through and through. And I definitely saw Klobuchar doing well in this state.
I think,
sure.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I work at like one of those. I worked at one of those local restaurants that catered to a lot of those people. So I would hear it throughout the primary season, like Klobuchar's looking really nice. Buttigieg seems cool this weekend.
Yeah, and we can never overlook that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So the funniest thing was the day after I was going through the lists of the towns that like Buttigieg won, and I was reading them off to my mom, and she would like just be listening to the names, and she would be like, oh, those are all the rich towns.
Yeah. Well, that was what I was gonna say about it. I was like, the thing about Jonah and I is living in Peterborough, we have to deal with an overabundance of that type of voter. We really see it in real time. And don't get me wrong, I love my town, but
right, yeah.
But damn. And so yeah, I knew that there was just this like, I don't know, it's like there were a whole bunch of people that were like, that were super into Bernie in 2016, but then I don't know, freaked out over the course of Donald Trump being president, and we're like, oh no, we have to go to the middle. And so you get the Petes and the Amy's of the world, and
right. And also it's an open primary, so I think a lot of independents opted to vote in that primary, and there's a lot of moderates who love Klobuchar, right? Even your Kasich Republicans love Klobuchar, right? So I think that played a big factor, but also it's such a diverse field that it kind of, you had your choice, whether it was Yang, Warren, Bernie, Tulsi, all these, even Tom Steyer, who did kind of better than expected. You had whatever flavor you wanted was on the ballot. So I actually thought it was impressive that Bernie still carried it.
I know, yeah. That always makes me so annoyed when people say, like, why didn't he do as well as he did in 2020? It's like, well, there was only one person he was running against in 2016. And there were approximately 30 million in 2020. So
yeah, when I canvassed for him a couple of days right before the primary, I was scared because a lot of the people were like, oh, Bernie seems great. He's like my second choice, or he's my third choice, but Warren or Yang or Tulsi, and I was like, oh, this seems shaky. It's like, this is not, but I was surprised when he pulled it off too. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wish that I don't know. I wish that the field hadn't been so big, partly. I mean, I think it was good that everybody got a taste and a sampler of all of the different things that you could see that were on the left, but it was a rough time to have that contest, I guess. Like, in my opinion, like, it's coming from like a more democratic socialist perspective. It was like having the left get split up that much during primary season, to me, feels like that. I feel like that could well be part of the reason. I mean, it is in a lot of ways the reason we're with Biden right now, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
And it's like, I will never say it shouldn't have happened, but do I think that there were better ways it could have played out? Yeah, probably. Yeah. I don't know. That's always my takeaway. But right now, according to the Times, we've got Feltus at 54% and Volinsky at 46%, but really all that's reporting is like Dover, Concord, and Manchester. and I would imagine it's not even all parts.
Yeah,
Right.
so 100 precincts per Manchester and Concord.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that it looks like, I mean, the size of the lead is pretty narrow anywhere but Concord. Like, Feltus really only has that strong lead in Concord right now. So I don't know, like, what do you guys think about this? Do you think the polling was on when they had Walensky a little ahead? Or was that, you know, I mean, obviously polling is always subject to debate because you're talking about a random sample size and it's like equal conservative, in, you know, whatever, liberal Democrat type of voters. So it's never, I always am like wary of any polling data, regardless of how quote unquote accurate it is. But I mean, what do y'all think about it?
Well, you know, I thought it was interesting that there was this kind of big article pushed from the Huffington Post that was referring to Walensky as sort of like Bernie's last stand or something. The title was very weird. It was like the Bernie movement has like one last chance with Andrew Walensky. And, you know, to me, kind of, I'm a little bit skeptical because I feel like that article also with the polling that showed Walensky ahead may have been a warning sign to the more establishment wing that, hey, we better come out and, you know, support Feltus or Walensky is going to win. But actually, I think Walensky has broader appeal than a lot of people give him credit for.
Yeah.
In the past few days, I was actually seeing some more mainstream Democrats who were actually saying, hey, this is a really tough choice, but I'm going with Walensky. So, you know, I do think the polling was accurate.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I was actually consistently surprised to see who was backing Walensky. There were, you know, so like last week, Jonah and I spent a bunch of time talking about this on one of the streams, that we just had a selectman resign in our town, and she was replaced by this guy who's he's like been on the select board since like the 80s, you know, like in and out. He's their clutch hitter or whatever. And the impression was generally like, okay, he's probably like your typical old like liberal dude. You know, I would expect him to be to the center based off his career and stuff like that. But it come to find out he was supporting Walensky. And we also had, you know, locally we had Mark Fernald, who ran against Craig Benson and lost for governor on an income tax. Like, he straight up ran on an income tax. It was kind of baller, but not successful. And I guess Craig Benson had a lot of money that year, so he was like, you know, like I was talking to my mom about it, and she was like, with the amount of signs you'd see around the state, you'd think the guy was already governor. And I was like, okay, that's a fair point to make, because, you know, road signs work for people, I guess. That's like, you know, political currency here in the state. You know, road signs are as good as donations. But, you know, I like, it's just, I'm always wary of what kind of outcome we have, but at the same time, I feel like the climate is so different right now within the Democratic Party. I feel like we really do have a shot with Walensky right now. Yeah.
I saw the polling data as just indication that the election was going to be close. Like whoever wins is going to win by a small margin. And I think that I agree with you, Carter. I think Walensky is going to pull it off. I think we're in a different moment, and I think enough Democrats in the state, while there is that like Pete Buttigieg, Jamie Klotlos, hardcore like moderate Democrats in this party, and like there's some, but I think the majority of the party would agree with what Andrew Walensky has put up, and I think based on his campaign, I think that it's probably likely that he pulls it off in the end. I think in the close election, I think Walensky will probably pull it off, and I think Feltus just kind of ran a too normal of a campaign, if that makes sense. Like he ran just kind of a copy paste of the past two campaigns we've seen, Molly Kelly and Colin Van Ostern, and that I don't think is going to play a third time in a Democratic primary.
Right.
I really
Dude,
like.
Yeah.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right, Jonah. But you know, but when I go back to that Steve Marchand, Molly Kelly race, I mean, Molly Kelly did not really run a very spirited campaign at all.
Yeah.
And, you know, Marchand, I think campaigned for 2 years for that. And I thought he was, you know, probably the most exceptionally qualified candidate I've seen for governor in New Hampshire, and still lost. So I'm coming into this cautiously optimistic, but I do think it's a different moment. I think you're all right. But it all depends on turnout. Like, was Andrew and his team able to really stir up the excitement, right? And really play to that base in New Hampshire that is growing and emerging. But did he excite people enough to bring them out to the polls? That's the big question, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's I think that's a good, you know, I think that's a good point personally. I think it's hard for me to gauge, you know, like I know that debates usually don't matter much, and I wish that they did. Like, I really wish that people really paid attention to debates, because there's so much like that gets done in them, and you can learn so much about it. But I wish that people had paid more attention to the debate, because I feel like in that context, you really got to see the difference between Walensky and Feltus. And I think he did stuff in that debate that I wished I had seen Bernie do in debates. You know what I mean?
100%. And Carter, you did a great breakdown too on that debate. And
Thank
you know,
you.
I saw it, but as I was watching WMUR and kind of seeing their YouTube page, I was like, man, these numbers, nobody's watching this.
Right.
But to your point, Walensky was just so assertive and so sharp on the issues and so confident in what his policy prescriptions were, that to me, I mean, I thought he really mopped the floor with Feltus in that debate. I thought Feltus, he just didn't look comfortable, didn't look sure of himself. Feltus is a nice guy, I mean, but that's not really what's that issue here. What's that issue is who's the best candidate. And I mean, I don't know how you walk away from that debate thinking that, you know, Walensky wasn't the clear winner of, you know, on pretty much across the board.
Yeah, exactly. Joining us now, I just want to interject for a moment. Joining us now is State Rep Sherry Frost, and she's also a total Twitter legend. I gotta say, Sherry, welcome to the show. How are you this evening?
Oh, Sherry, you're on mute. There we go.
Not anymore.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Making it happen. Oh, and Robin Vogt is also joining us now. Dude, this is awesome. Everybody's showing up. We're gonna make it happen.
It's a progressive coalition takeover. Watch out.
Yeah. New Hampshire Progressive Coalition takes over, locally sourced tonight for the election. Man, this is a good time. So David brought up a really interesting question earlier, and it was about down ballot races and what the most interesting down ballot race is right now. And I am so curious to hear from everybody what their most interesting down ballot race is, because I'm always curious to hear about the more competitive local stuff. That's the nitty gritty, you know? So I let's see here. David, why don't you start us off and we can just go around.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, but you know, I just being on the ground here in the Portsmouth area and being who just entered the chat room, I got to shout out Robin Vogt, because I think that's when I'm really watching, because, you know, of course his opponent is, you know, a 40-year incumbent, you know, somebody who really has represented that old guard and been a stalwart. And I think if Robin can pull off this victory, it really is indicative of a sea change that we're seeing sort of across the board. So I'm watching that one very closely.
Yeah, Robin, I also seriously, good luck and congrats on your run in general. How are you feeling about today?
Hey, you know, I came back probably not even an hour ago from Ward 1, and they reported out the preliminary results so far. And I'm telling you right now, I'm only down 80 votes as of right now, which is pretty crazy. And when the room heard that against Laura Pantelakis, they were like, oh, this guy's not coming to mess around. Okay. So there's a lot of close races here in Portsmouth, but I am keeping my eyes and I am keeping monitored because 80 votes is an interesting number.
That is super close. That's yeah. Wow. So, all right. On that note, let's see, Hannah, what do you feel like you're looking at as far as races that you're curious to see the outcome of? Aside, even if it's just the governor race.
I've been a little busy, not gonna lie, with work, just with back in the office this week. So it's and the thing is always my district is very conservative, so it tends to be, you sort of have people run and hope they'll do well, but it doesn't often come together. So yeah, so I kind of lack on the I have paid attention to some, but like there isn't a particular one that I've been able to pick out just because of that.
That's fair. Also, on the grind all the time makes it hard to pay attention to politics.
Yes. Answering phones.
Man, you can only listen to so many podcasts while you're on the phone with people, I tell you.
I know.
So, Sherry, down ballot race. What are you thinking? What's one you're looking at?
I'm going to second David in really being concerned about Robin's race. Like I need this man in the House with me. I'm also focused as well on Marcus Ponce de Leon's race. He is running against a husband and wife team.
Yes. Who
are they've been working very hard at name recognition over the last couple of years. And we strongly suspect, though they strongly deny it, that they're free staters running as Democrats. So, this is news to you?
Oh, well, no, I mean, it's not necessarily, but like, okay, hold on. I got to pause break for a second. Can we talk, like, Sherry, can you tell us about free state Democrats a little bit? Because I understand that this is a thing, and I feel like some people don't.
So, I can't claim ownership of a great deal of intricate knowledge about the Free State movement. I kind of try to avoid them whenever possible. They're a particular brand of libertarian. And the ultimate goal, as I understand it, somebody decided that, they did a survey of all 50 states and tried to figure out which state was most, they didn't use the word vulnerable, but that's really kind of what they were looking for. Which state was most susceptible to being taken over?
Sure.
Right? And whatever calculus they did, they came up with New Hampshire as the answer. So they sent out this gigantic call for all like-minded people to move to New Hampshire. And, it's really easy to run for office. What do you need? You need residency and $2. That's it. And their goal was to get as many of them as elected as possible to sort of storm the castle, take over, and then dismantle the government. Maybe super simplistic. I'm sure that they will argue with me that that was their point, but really that's kind of their point.
Sure.
And what has happened is most of their, at least as far as from my perspective, recognizing, again, I'm not an expert here, but from my perspective, most of their policies align very closely or more closely with Republicans than they do with Democrats, right? Because Democrats believe that government can do good, right? We have the whole general welfare and, all of that. And they're like, no, less government is better. We don't want to, we want to get rid of road signs, these people, right? But they're also smart enough to understand the way that districts are mapped out. So they tend to run in whatever party will get them the biggest chance of getting elected, right? So, and there's no test, right? I mean, anybody can register to be anything. I could have, if I lived in a Republican district, I could run as a Republican. and there's nothing they can do to stop me. So, when you say a free state Democrat, they're only a Democrat because they live in a Democratic district.
Sure. Okay.
So, and again, they will deny it one side and down the other, but Amanda and Andrew are free staters.
Well, that's super unfortunate for anybody who didn't know that ahead of today's vote, and I am sad that I was not able to cover it on this channel ahead of then. But alas, we learn and we move forward, and now folks can be aware of what a Democratic Free Stater is. Like, it's, I've done some reading about it. They are very splintered, and part of the problem that I find with libertarians, broadly speaking, is that, like, there's no true libertarian. Like, they'll argue between themselves about what being a true libertarian is, and it's kind of just, it's silly. So it's generally speaking, though, yeah, it's incredibly detrimental to have folks like that up in the state house, because I would imagine it's very difficult to build coalition with them.
Yes.
It's unfortunate, but obviously there's probably some issues like legalization that we might be able to get down with. And
there are a number of things that true progressives on the left and sort of your textbook libertarian can agree on, right? We can agree on the death penalty, right? Neither of us, on both sides, neither of us thinks that the state should be should be able to kill people.
right.
The thing that always surprises me is how many anti-abortion libertarians I run up against. And that makes absolutely no sense to me at all, right? You
Sure.
would think that the whole personal responsibility, get the government out of my life kind of people would be like, they shouldn't have any say in my healthcare. But I've only met 2 pro-choice libertarians,
Okay.
and neither of them have been in office. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Well, and then there's the whole thing about the pedophilia excusal that they were doing. The Keene guys. There was that whole like Keene wing that was like, oh yeah, like I think this pedophile has a right to do his thing, and it was like, wait a minute, what did you just say? And that was not great. So
that wasn't just libertarians. That was straight up Republicans. A couple of years ago when we were trying to raise the marriage age, I remember this as if it was yesterday, because it was a very bad, no good, terrible, absolutely awful day at the State House. We had both child marriage, trying to get rid of child marriage, and trans rights on the docket for that day. And we lost them both. The child marriage story is really an interesting one. Does everybody know who Cassie Levesque is?
vaguely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cassie Levesque?
Yes.
Okay, so she was a Girl Scout, did her, like, whatever the equivalent Eagle Scout sort of project is on child marriage, and it became her issue. And she did some research and discovered that New Hampshire's minimum marriage age for boys was 14 years old and for girls was 13. And she was like, can I swear on this thing?
Oh, yeah, I don't care.
Okay, good. All right. She was like, hey, that's fucked up, right? So, well, she didn't say that, but, that was the basic premise of it. She was shocked to find out that, parents can marry their 13-year-old daughters off in the state of New Hampshire. There's nothing stopping them. So she went to her representative, who at the time was Jackie Silly, and essentially said, hey, this is fucked up. And Jackie said, oh my God, you're right. This is fucked up. Let's fix that. They wrote a bill. It sailed through committee and ended up on the consent calendar. Well, the Republicans pulled it off consent, argued at the well that our boys in uniform need to be able to marry their pregnant 13-year-old sweethearts, and we lost.
See, that just seems wild to me. That just
Swear to
seems...
God. I sat there and watched them argue.
You know what's probably ironic is those same people are probably out there spouting QAnon nonsense about going after pedophile rings, right? Yet here they are, proponents of it right at home. It's just a bizarre subculture in New Hampshire that is really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, actually, this is an interesting question that I would love to pose to everybody. I definitely have some that are more about electoral politics, but I'm really enjoying this discussion right now. QAnon, has anybody like had any IRL experiences related to conspiracy folks that they would care to share right now, like while we're just commiserating about it?
They covered up some of the local lawn signs that were just around the town with a bunch, like they just took pieces of paper, wrote the like hashtag save our kids or save our children or whatever, and they like taped them over some of them. They included their their Instagram account in the bottom corner, so I found out it was like some Dunkin' Donuts barista who like also does stand-up comedy, I guess. It was very odd. It was like you drive by and see it and be like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was I think that was more about them being tired of seeing the 1.5 million signs than, actually that though.
Right. Yeah, and just so everybody knows, Robin had to bounce because he's got to go do his rad thing. So anybody who's like getting bored with us swearing about QAnon people, you can head over and check out the rad stream, which undoubtedly is like very, very positive. So, but at any rate, I had a very interesting conversation today with somebody who was like very, very frustrated about the whole school situation, except it was from the completely opposite direction of what I would expect. And I was like, it was like, this is stupid. We should just be sending our kids all the way back to school. This is and I was like, whoa, okay. This is not what I was anticipating to get into a conversation about. And I was, they told me like, oh, well, my family is, has worked in pharmaceuticals and and so, we got tested back at this time, and supposedly this was going around in 2017, and I was like, okay, I will be cordial right now, but I read science journals for my information. And this is not like, this doesn't line up with my understanding of how things are. So yeah, I mean, I always think it, people will have a certain amount of reason when I'm existing inside my bubble, but then I just walk out into public for 20 minutes and it's like, oh, right, people are crazy. So
yeah, actually, so just real quick, I actually went down an interesting rabbit hole with the great granddaughter of Dwight Eisenhower, Laura Eisenhower, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with her. Very interesting woman, very smart woman, intuitive, but she has just very recently has sort of semi-adopted the QAnon philosophy in some regards, and seems very conflicted about what to believe in. And this is somebody who was so sure about her beliefs before this. So, and that raised an alarm to me, because I'm like, wow, if people are actually considering like voting for Trump because of the QAnon philosophy, then it really could tilt the election. And, to me, that's why it's the perfect propaganda psyops. And we talked about that, Carter. But but yeah, I've been having some really mystifying in real life conversations with people about it, to the point where I'm very concerned about its impact in November.
Yeah. No, and that's so okay. Maybe this is the nice little segue, I guess. Like in concerning ourselves with November, right? As of right now, whether it's Feltus or Valinsky, we've got like a 24, 25 point gap that we have to close. Like that's a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm always, ever the pragmatist, I'm always trying to think about like, all right, well, what do we do? What do we actually meaningfully do about that? You know what I mean? Like, because it's not, in a lot of ways, I feel like it's not about making whoever is gonna be running against Sununu more palatable, so much as it's about trying to get people to understand why things are not okay, because we live in such a weird little bubble in our communities. Like, it's the rural isolationist nature of our Yankee culture is like, it makes it hard to see that when someone else is going through it, if they're not talking to you about it. And then additionally, we just don't talk about that stuff because that's, again, not part of our Yankee culture. So like, I'm always curious, like, how do we crack that egg of convincing people to turn out and close that gap? Subset question: what the hell is up with independent voters in New Hampshire? And because that gets talked about like it's a monolith, and I'd love to try and demystify it a little bit. So again, answer any part of whatever of that anybody feels like, and we can go back around the circle again with it, because I really am so curious. David, if you want to kick it off.
So I think that, and you're right, independent voters, are not a monolith, but they do comprise the largest percentage of New Hampshire registered voters. Like, most New Hampshire voters are registered independents, and that seems to be growing. So to me, in November, we are in a tough position if we're talking about the national ticket, because, and I even think there was something that leaked to where one of Biden's representatives was urging people not to talk about policy, just to kind of talk about Joe's personality, how he's, stands for decency and all this kind of stuff. I think we're in a tough position if we're not able to bring out the Obama coalition, which was younger people, more diverse populations, people who were generally disaffected and didn't feel like they had much agency in the political process. And now we're tasked to try to convince those people to vote for Biden. But my strategy is not to do that, but to highlight just how dangerous a second Trump term would be, and how much more damage control we would have to do if he has 4 more years. I mean, we are already, if Biden and Harris get elected, I mean, the amount of damage that they're going to have to clean up around the world and domestically is going to be unfathomable. But another 4 years would set our movement back so far that people need to be passionate about countering Trump more so than saying, okay, I'm voting for Biden because he really represents my progressive values. And that can be a tough sell, but unfortunately, that's the predicament we're in.
Do you think that it could end up the same way as 2016 if you take the go anti-Trump strategy, though, as if Hillary did? Because like I remember seeing a chart of like the commercials Hillary did based on policy, a third thing, and then Trump focused, and it was overwhelmingly Trump focused. And if that's what we go with again, could we see Biden potentially lose the Midwest, as even though he's supposed to win it? Is that?
Yes, we could. But here's 2 distinctions I would draw. One, Hillary Clinton had historic unfavorables as a candidate. I mean, she was just. I don't think we can. I don't think we can overestimate how much she was disliked by the electorate. Biden doesn't. Biden actually has pretty high favorables. 2, Trump, we didn't really know how dangerous he could be in 2016. I mean, people just kind of thought he was a clown and a joke. But after 4 years of a record, we see that he's actually a fascist in training. So I think now we have the evidence and the data to prove just how destructive Trump has been. And we're not running a candidate with historic unfavorable. So that's my hope, Jonah.
I actually agree with you. I just hope that it's like policy focused anti-Trump, like focusing on the evil things he's done in his administration, not like the anti-Trump personality. Like, just, I don't think
you're right.
Fighting Trump's personality will win. I think people don't. I don't think everyone can see how evil Trump is as a person, And I think that if we can point out the evils of his administration as opposed to running ads on him as a person, I think that's the anti-Trump strategy we take. I think that...
Indeed. Well said.
Yeah.
I got a text message that was like something about checking to see if you're like registered to vote, and they led it with like, remember that mean thing Trump said about New Hampshire in 2017? I was like, don't you have something more recent? I don't know, COVID. It was very, I was like, I do recall that because it was an insane thing to say, but like, I'm like 2017.
Well, and like on top of that too, I really wish that the left would accept the fact that the problem with Trump's Twitter, right, is that he's funny. Like we'll all laugh genuinely about how stupid a tweet is. Like sometimes it's just like it's over a line, and the problem with his incredible oration ability like that, he's such an effective communicator, is, to Jonah's point, people forget how evil the dude is. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's especially the case with young people, and that's my big worry with like my generation, is when they are scrolling through and they see Trump, the actual Trump Instagram or whatever, or the Trump Twitter, and it's him and it's the Trump Tower pasted over Greenland in a Photoshop way, and they laugh about like, oh, Trump's saying he's going to buy Greenland. I think, unfortunately, although that stuff is not attached to policy at all, I think a lot of really young kids do get kind of like swooned in by just how funny he is and how engaging his Twitter is and how like just over the top and ridiculous he can be. And then once they're following him and then they follow other people because the algorithm, and then they get stuck in this rabbit hole of right-wing whatever, just
watching
because
Mad Ben Shapiro videos.
Exactly. Quoting Candace Owen videos or something like that. Like just from Trump posting a meme about Greenland. And I think if you don't counter that in some way, I don't know necessarily how to counter that. I don't have the answers, but like if you don't counter that, then you're going to have a whole generation of people being propagandized by this man who's just sucking them in because they're on their phones 24/7, especially when they are on their phones 24/7. A lot of us are, because we're not at school. We're just scrolling through Instagram and whatever and seeing these images and getting it,
inundated.
Influenced by them. Yeah.
Shout out everybody. Carlos Cardona is joining the room right now.
What's going on, Carlos?
He's connecting his audio now.
By the way, now might be a good time to interject. There's an election update.
Ooh.
So Emmett Soldati, who's running for executive council in District 2, just got a big boost and just jumped up to second, just barely trailing Warmington. He's got about 26%.
Oh wow!
Trailing her by a couple hundred votes. So I know we're all watching that race closely. Emmett has run such an interesting campaign, and his team, I think, have really been creative with how they've drawn up excitement and used kind of every tool at their disposal to put forth what I think is just a really smart campaign. And I love the messaging. Rural, I think like radical rural or something, and
proud townie.
A proud townie. I mean, it's just a really powerful message that I think a lot of young aspiring politicians should really try to model after and study the way he's run his campaign, and what looks like thus far, win or lose, a successful outing for him.
Yeah. I was really impressed by the ad that he did. It was really well done.
I was honestly impressed by the graphic design. Like dude's got money signs. Let me tell you, like when it comes to color palettes and like font choice, untoppable. I tell you. And the Nikes at the events, beautiful. Just absolutely exactly what I'm looking for in a guy who's gonna
spice up the outfits a bit.
Yeah, I mean that goes back to the whole abolish political dress code conversation that I was having with Marcella, because I mean that's actually something that's come up a couple times on this channel. Like or just in my life recently, Carlos, when he pops on, excuse me, I got to give him credit. He introduced me to the concept of wrinkly t-shirt politicians. Like, you know, like the guy who can't afford the really nice, like $150 pressed shirt, who's running anyways because shit sucks and he wants to make a difference. And I was like, we need more wrinkly t-shirt politicians up in this joint. Like, and I would compliment that by saying we also need more Nike adorned politicians up in this joint. So
yeah, they're definitely. And by the way, shout out to Carlos, because I think one of the first times I met him, he was wearing like a pro animal rights t-shirt at like a political event, and I was like, hey, this dude's not playing around. Like this is a real deal right here. I became an instant Carlos Cardona fan after that.
Oh man,
Hey,
and
he
it
just
looks
said he
like
won.
yeah, Carlos won. So when he
Just
gets
said he
here,
won.
we can once his audio comes in, we can give Carlos a big hip hip hooray.
Oh, you won? The results are in?
What it
Yes.
said.
Yes.
All right.
Snaps and
Definitely
snaps
clap
and
for that
claps
one.
and all that, because that's
a big win.
that is a big win. That is a big win. Genuine question here. Sherry, what do you think the risk of the House or Senate not staying blue is? If you had to guess.
Well, the problem, as we've seen in this last term, is that we can have the House and the Senate, but if we can't get rid of the governor and we don't have a veto-proof majority, shit just doesn't get done. So, you know, we can have a blue Senate and we can have a blue House, but if we don't have a really blue Senate and House, then
I just heard a report. I won my election, guys.
Here he is.
Hey, congratulations, Carlos. That's huge, man.
Yes.
That's exciting.
Congratulations.
All right, I gotta go report to Twitter. So
Sounds
I'll
good.
be
Yeah.
right
Well,
back.
thanks for popping in, man. That was we
No
appreciate
problem.
your
I had
visit.
to.
Awesome.
All right.
Take care, man. Yeah. Sorry, Sherry, you were saying.
So it's a matter of, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
Right. So right now we have we don't have veto-proof majorities in either house, and
Right.
without that, if we get stuck with Sununu again, which we probably will, we can pass all the good stuff in the world, and if he's able to get his contingent in lockstep to refuse to override the vetoes, then nothing's getting done.
Right. And so I think part of the reason I asked this question, anticipating that the answer was probably going to be something like that, you know, I think maybe strategically speaking, again, regardless of the outcome of the primary tonight, which, you know, if things hold the way they are currently, we likely will end up with Feltus. I mean, again, there's still so much of the state that's not in. And Nikki Forty actually made a great point about whether, you know, how reliable what we're seeing even is because of absentee ballots and
Right.
the amount of counting that needs to go into that. Now, I regret that I did not lock this down before I came on about whether or not this state is one of the states that like doesn't count absentee ballots until the day of the election.
That is correct.
Okay.
My understanding is that is correct. So my husband's a selectman. He and my daughter are still at our polling place right now. And I found out about Ward 3. I still don't know how I did. Like, I have 2 family members at the polling place, and they still haven't given me my numbers. They're going to catch hell for that when they get home. I brought him supper.
Where are those
Hey,
numbers?
I went and
Sherry,
got 5
Sherry, I
guys
know-
for this man.
Oh, wow.
What the hell?
Sherry,
You don't want to
Sure, I
hate the
noticed all
selectmen,
of-
Sherry.
To get it together.
Right?
all over the seacoast, though, we're having 0% reporting. Like, I don't know what's going on with that. Like in
Then the
in
gubernatorial.
State Senate, right? State
Well-
Senate District 21, Daglin and Rebecca's race 0% in. You know, your race, obviously. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what's going on with that.
I think it. So I got I got readings from Ward 3, which is Ariel's ward. They sent me, her partner sent me a photo image of the readout from the machine. And that's just in-person votes. There's you can figure trends from that. So, those numbers that Ariel reported are not necessarily what the numbers are going to be at the end, but I don't even have that.
Right.
So I'm like, hey, hold on a second. Now, I can report that when I brought him 5 guys, he reported that our votes that we turned in as absentee, the girls and me, all of our votes were counted today. Mm-hmm. And he knows that because he happened to open those envelopes.
Interesting.
So,
well, there you go.
I'm confident that my vote was counted, but I think that the moderators had a fair bit of leeway in when they're releasing the numbers, and I think I know my moderator. She's my next door neighbor. Super conscientious. Like, she takes this shit very, very seriously, and I am certain that she doesn't want to release those numbers until she's sure of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's wise.
I'm over here going, come on. But
by the way,
at the same
we've
time,
got.
I'm not worried about it because I'm not in a primary. So.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
well,
my district
so we
is
do
like
have
+8 Democrat.
In District 15 State Senate, 70% precincts reporting. Becky Whitley and Paul Hodes are in a dead heat right now, both 34%.
I see that.
With Candace Bouchard just trailing at 31.5%. So that's a 3-way competitive race. That'll be interesting to see who plays out. What do you all think about that race?
Man, I want Paul, yo.
Yeah, we obviously endorse Paul, but
him,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, straight up, yeah. I mean, Paul is the is the clear ticket. But I mean, I really liked, I saw some interviews that he had done before the 10 talk that you guys did. He had done some interviews, and I really liked just his vibe. He's got that like soft uncle kind of vibe going.
Yeah, he does.
And I'm like, yeah, I'll take more of those. I'll take more of those in the State House. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, definitely. When we talked with Paul, it was kind of like I got the vibe from him that he was just like, you know what, this is kind of the end of my political career. He's like, I want to go out with a bang and really push forth progressive principles. And he just kind of had that like, tenured professor vibe. Like, I'm just going to say whatever's on my mind and fight for the people. I was like, I really felt like it was a genuine sentiment coming from him. And by the way, that's not to say I think Becky Whitley is also a very strong candidate, but I agree with you. I think Hodes would be great for the state Senate, just given where his mind and heart are at right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a good win. It's like, it's weird because this time around there were only so many competitive races in as far as Democratic races are concerned. Like, a lot of people kind of are going to, it'll be competitive in the general. That's going to change for sure. But many people didn't have to just didn't have to sweat the primary process, which is, I think in some cases that's fine. In other cases it's not. It depends on how much I like that politician and how much I agree with them. And that's always subjective for everybody. Just trying to be friendly to anyone who isn't a total lefty like those of us on the stream right now. Because who knows, maybe somebody from the center who's watching this will feel a little less center after watching it. That would make me happy. That's always one of the side goals of this stream, is to like get people off that stupid middle fence of state politics. And at that, I was just looking at Dan and Andrew are realistically right now, like 12.29% reporting, and it's barely over 1,000 vote gap. Like, I don't know. That seems really closable to me. I know that when you talk about it in percentage, it's like 53-46, but you know, that just, I don't know. Maybe I'm just electorally dull, but but that doesn't seem like a huge gap to close. It's not like Marshawn Kelly stuff, you know what I mean? Like, to your point, David, like the concern about this race, I would say the thing that sets this apart from the 2018 primary is like Molly Kelly just swept Steve. Like, that just happened hard. And I've said it on the channel before, full disclosure, like I did the video ads for Steve that year. And I remember there was one ad that we cut that actually made it into circulation on television. And that was like the black and white ads. So we didn't even have a diversity of ads. There was just the one. It aired for like a very,
with him
very
speaking French, right?
Yeah,
it was speaking French, right?
Yep. So we made that ad, and that was on like MSNBC during Maddow, like one night or something like that, maybe 2 nights. And it was like, and it was airing on WMUR, but you're not getting that widespread saturation. We didn't have any kind of like buy-in on Hulu or whatever to get those ads in front of people in a digital space beyond just like pushing it hard on Facebook. But again, it was like we'd post and then boost those posts, you know, like sink money into just trying to get it in front of more eyes. But it was like the money situation just completely changed everything. And you look at Volinsky beating Feltis last quarter in earnings, and like, to me, that's showing up in this coming in right now. Like, I see, like, to me, that's it. And if anything, maybe that's the argument for why we need to have a real substantial conversation about the influence of money in politics, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So, Sherry is saying it looks like Emmett won on Ward 4 in Dover, which is great. You know, that's a race that we've all been very curious to see what happens. I personally think Emmett's like the heir to Volinsky's seat. That's just my personal take. You know what I mean? Like, when I look at what he advocates for, it's kind of like right in line with that. So anyways,
absolutely. Another race, I know we're all watching closely, is Daglin versus Rebecca for state senate, which we don't really have much data in yet, but that's gonna be a really interesting race. I mean, anecdotally on the ground in Portsmouth, seems to be a lot of support for Rebecca, but I think Daglin might carry, Newmarket and some of those more progressive parts of the Seacoast to really make it competitive, and I think he'll probably eke it out, but I think it's going to be a close race. I'm curious as to what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta be honest. I don't know too much personally about Daglin's race. I'm familiar with Daglin politically, right? Like, I'm very familiar with I remember when he ran in the primary for what ultimately became Pappas's seat. So I recall that, but again, it's not a race that I'm as familiar with. And I think that's probably in large part because I'm not closer to the Seacoast. I think if I was, I'd have a better literacy on that. And that's actually one of the things that I want to like get my chops up on. So, I mean, I would say those, David, what's your take on it? I mean, I think, I don't know if we have anybody. Hannah, what town are you in exactly? I don't know if I've ever asked you specifically.
It's right outside of Nashua.
Okay.
It's a smaller town, so I don't ever really say it too much online just because it's very small.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I'm always curious.
But yeah, it's just outside of Nashua.
Sure. So, I mean, I think, David, you might be one of the most expert on Seacoast. So I would actually be curious to hear what your thoughts on Daglin's race is. Like, I mean, you say it sounds, I mean, we don't have any data yet. Oh, well, actually, nope, I take that back. It looks like it just refreshed. Yeah, 3 minutes ago, apparently. So I mean, it doesn't seem as close as we'd like it to be. Now, that's only, 222 to 70.
Yeah, with like 9% precincts reporting, I see that same data point. But yeah, thus far, I mean, Rebecca out to an early lead. We'll see how that plays out. But, Rebecca had all the support from, the old guard establishment in Portsmouth. I know, the Portsmouth chair, Laurie McRae, was a big backer. But Daglin had his fair share of establishment endorsements as well. So it was interesting to see how it played out. I think that, from my point of view, Daglin is clearly the heir to that seat in terms of being a true progressive. I think District 21 is one of the more progressive districts, and I personally would not like to see it go to somebody who's more centrist leaning. I mean, Rebecca actually voted for John Kasich in the 2016 primary. And, I think it certainly is more of a moderate centrist. And, Daglin, and having firsthand conversations with him, getting to know him throughout his congressional race, just really thought he had some amazing, innovative ideas on economic innovation and also education. And he really had some progressive values that I thought resonated heavily with a lot of progressive voters. I think the challenge there for Daglin is the imaging. He's an Oxford guy. He's a rower. He kind of comes from that kind of Phillips Exeter type of vibe and type of branding. But I think if you really get to know him and you really start to zone in on his politics, he is unabashedly progressive. And also somebody I think who's really, willing to challenge kind of the holy cows of the state party infrastructure to bring in change. So I'm a big Daglin supporter, and I really hope he does well tonight.
Yeah. Sherry, thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm just going to second what David said.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting. I mean, to me, I think Daglin's approach is one that is kind of exemplary of what we need to, I'm always thinking about it in terms of coalition and like, how do you build a coalition? And consequently, what do you need? What are we all going to have to start to make peace with in terms of what we're comfortable with versus what we're not comfortable with? And I think, like, to your point, Daglin presents a really interesting example of this to me because of that type of vibe, right? That type of like affluence, corporate background vibe we do need to remember that's not always an immediate excluder of somebody's values. And you gotta actually, like, it's worth getting to know folks. It's worth listening to them speak about stuff. Anytime I can get an opportunity to listen to somebody speak conversationally, right? I always think that is a very good way for me to gauge how this person will respond in a situation where they have to defend an idea. And
yes,
something that I've learned is that, frankly, folks from that, like, in that upper crust are really, really good at arguing ideas. And somebody who's within the left, who's interested in like purity testing people like crazy, somebody like that would probably present a bit of a moral conundrum, and I would imagine would probably have some, depending on the person and depending on what part of Twitter they're coming flying out of, they would, they would could very well attack that as being like making some sort of equation to a candidate like Daglin being the same thing as a neoliberal, and that's not the case, right? And
absolutely, and that's such a good point, Carter. Because as progressives, we want to broaden the camp, right? We want to be more inclusive and also to persuade and bring in people who you on their face you might not necessarily think they vibe with the movement, but when you really drill down, they do. And I think if you look at the 2018 congressional race, if you look at the debates, in my opinion, Daglin won the intellectual argument in terms of making the most persuasive case for progressive policy. And he's kind of carried that banner, as a Portsmouth city councilor now. And, he's definitely kind of has that Gavin Newsom, polish to him, right? Which, to your point, is going to turn some, hardcore progressives off who kind of want, their politicians to be disheveled and not quite as articulate. But, for me, I'm really big on policy and to the core, like when you, and are they authentic about it? And I think Daglin passes all those tests.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think it's also worth noting, and I mean, like, maybe Hannah can speak to this a little bit because, being part of Southern New Hampshire DSA and doing organizing, like, what's even the prominence of a actual, like, actual left, like in a global context, right? If we were to talk about it in if this wasn't the United States, and we actually had a real left, not like Bernie Sanders is globally a centrist. And my question is sort of around how present is that in New Hampshire, even in your experience trying to organize through the DSA?
Yeah, I mean, when we've always found it that it's sort of a smaller group of people who like self-select into it. It's people who like found it through Bernie or, after Trump got elected. I know I signed up for DSA when Bernie dropped out, and then I found DSA, our New Hampshire chapter. It was like January of 2017. So that's around the timeline when I found it. And a lot of people fall in on the timeline of like when Trump won or if other sort of bigger moments along the way, or when Bernie dropped out again, stuff like that. So it's kind of the people who self-select into it, and it's kind of hard to like break out of that, especially now.
Sure, yeah. It sounds like it's also very much so motivated by like political cataclysm.
Yeah, it really is. It's a lot of people, they kind of got to the end of something and then they were like, I want to do more with this. And they found us either from Facebook or on Twitter or something like that.
Yeah. So, and I have to wonder, I mean, okay. That to me is super interesting. I'm going to throw this idea out here and I'd be curious what everybody's take on it is, right? We are approaching in November, like we literally have a date even. We're approaching another political cataclysm in that sense. And I don't know that we'll get something comparable to it again between now and November, because frankly, what the hell is going to beat coronavirus, right? Like what the fuck could possibly do worse to us at this point in time than coronavirus?
I swear to God, if you've just jinxed it.
Yeah, I know. Hey,
I swear to God.
I mean, I was like, there's nothing
Shut
worse.
up.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, no, okay, but here. Let me get around to it though, right? Because seriously, I wanna put this out there. What's the likelihood that Biden getting elected is going to be enough of a cataclysm to motivate a true left base within the next 4 years should he be president? Right? Like, I'm concerned. I am deeply, deeply concerned that if Biden wins the election, the left will deflate yet again. We won't have the political cataclysm necessary to truly mobilize, and we're going to recede. I'm worried about it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I have my concerns about it. And so I'm sort of curious, like, how do we deal with that type of more like 3 moves ahead strategy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely feel that. I think that a lot. I personally feel really concerned about us getting too short-sighted about it, making it all about beating Trump, and then in 4 years we get like Tom Cotton as president or something like that, or someone else who's like smarter and less crazy and is able to like fully formulate a plan.
Like
and it really
Josh
worries
Hawley
me
or
how many
somebody like that. Yeah.
It worries me how many times I've like voiced that and people have been like, well, okay, but we just got to get rid of Trump now. And I'm like, but that's the point. If we make it about just that, you know, we might be setting ourselves up for like, you know, horrendous failure in just 4 years. And that just, that's something that weighs on me a lot, because it's just like, it seems so obvious to me. And then I talk with people about it and they're like, what? But, you know, we just got to get rid of Trump. And it's like,
isn't the only thing we can do?
No, go ahead. No, you first.
Isn't the only thing we can do is focus on those local races? Just like try to win in township, like especially in New Hampshire, isn't it? Like, it's mostly townships that elect their state reps and all their other things. So focus on townships, focus on organizing in townships here in the state, and then trying to build that base in the state house. I feel like that's the only thing we can do if national leaders aren't going to take that call, and trying to elect true progressives to the Congress, I'd say, as well. Trying to, if we had 2 Bernie Sanders AOC type progressives in both of our blue congressional seats, and Andrew Volinsky as governor and all these other things, I think we might be able to push through as the left and not deflate ourselves if we can still see that there's the goal of passing Medicare for all eventually, or passing a state local Green New Deal and getting all these things. Because, you know, it's just not losing sight of the goals of our policies and the vision of our issues. And I think that's how we don't deflate. If we make it about like candidates and losing elections, I think we could probably deflate ourselves. And I think we saw a lot of that when Bernie Sanders lost. But if we can bring the focus to like, our vision will change people's lives and transform this country in a fundamental way, I think we can push through a moderate Biden presidency and win on a local level. But Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah.
So this is probably gonna come off sounding like purity, but it's not. So in January of 2017, I was at one of the women's marches in Portsmouth, and I came across a white woman, capital W, carrying, I mean, I feel like I need to make that distinction because I am in fact a white woman, but I'm not like a white woman trademark white woman. You know what I mean? I feel like I need to make that distinction. But anyway, so I come across this white woman and she's carrying a sign. Swear to God, it says, if Hillary had won, we'd all be at brunch.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right? And so it nailed, like it sort of, it dug into my brain and it frustrated the shit out of me. And I remember sort of raging about it for days. And one of the things that I got called on an awful lot during the Obama years was, you know, oh, you're an Obama zombie, right? I mean, when he won, I was genuinely, when he won the first time, I was genuinely hopeful. Like, we had never seen in my lifetime, we'd never seen anybody who campaigned like that and who brought together coalitions and who, you know, promised that we were going to actually see the change you need to see, right? We are the change that we've been waiting for. Great. Sign me the fuck up. He won. We got tickets and we went to the inauguration. I bundled my kids up and stood in like 30-degree weather with millions of my fellow countrymen and wept on the mall when he got inaugurated. And then, right, didn't close Guantanamo, drilled in the Arctic, didn't push for Medicare for all. Like, the laundry list of, yeah, he killed bin Laden. Great. But
he also started many new wars.
Right? Drone strikes and
90% civilian
drone strikes. To say nothing of all of the domestic bullshit, right? I mean, bailing out banks and not people.
Side note,
let's not forget all the black people who've been murdered by police. We kind of started that, paying attention to that under Obama.
Black Lives Matter started under Obama, didn't it?
Sure did. Yep. That's right.
And
up
Bin
until-
Laden's niece or whatever is a QAnon advocate now.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right.
I saw that.
and even like, and the
Man.
one thing that so two more things. One, both pieces of gun legislation that were passed under Obama were enabling, right? We had Sandy Hook under Obama. We had like all of that, and up until Trump, he was the president who deported the most people. We never
Yes.
talk about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
We never
right.
talk about that. But the thing is, I abhor the whole both sides kind of stuff, right? I abhor that. But in some cases, it's kind of a valid point. So all of that shit that happened under Obama is also happening under Trump, but Trump is celebrating it,
Right.
right? And the people who support Trump are celebrating it.
Right.
And so when it was happening under Obama, the people who are supporting Trump now hated it because Obama was a black man, right? And the people who were paying attention were few and far between,
Yeah.
right? So we're out here screaming, and we're all, we're being looked at like, oh, you ungrateful bitch! Like, you have a Democrat in the White House. What more do you want? So my big fear is that woman is going to go back to brunch, right?
Right.
All of these trademark white women who've been woke,
Yep.
right,
Yeah.
Obama's gonna go back in office. Oh, thank God, we can finally go back to brunch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's all the people who like they spend all day on Twitter acting like they know everything about politics, and they're like, you stupid people who just don't know anything about it. And then like the DNC happens and AOC does the standard procedure of nominating Bernie, and they're
And
like,
they flip
what did she do? Why did she do that? And you're like,
Right.
that's standard procedure.
Right.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
knew
It's
a
just
single
mean.
thing about this, you wouldn't be shocked. But for
Right.
some reason you are, because you don't actually know anything about this. You just watched CNN and, started paying attention when Trump won.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
Sort of, I'm sorry. Sort of circling back to your point, Carter, is that we have to figure out, and this is where that whole purity thing comes in. We have to figure out who we're talking about when we're talking about the left.
Right.
Right.
I think, Sherry, you just really reminded me you brought me back to 2008, because I was living in Washington, D.C. at that time, and I had just got accepted into Howard Law School. And I remember when Obama won, I was on the streets with a bunch of friends on U Street near Georgia Avenue, right at the heart of Washington, D.C. And I had never seen such an electric vibe of people. Like, people were just like hugging each other, like celebrating, like we're really going to change. Like, we are on the brink of real change, right?
Yep.
And if you remember, I mean, even Obama campaigned on that progressive promise.
Yep.
And in large part, that's why he had such a momentum, I mean, taking out the Clinton juggernaut machine right out of nowhere. No one expected that. So, but to your point, the problem with the Democratic establishment is that their actions are all symbolism and no substance. And we saw that with Obama. Now, not to say that he didn't do some substantive things. I mean, the Paris Accords, the Iran deal, there were some things you could choose from there. But overall, Sherry, you're right. It was much more symbolic than substantive. And in fact, we were able to, they were able to get away with a lot of the bank bailouts and a lot of the corruption, the Pentagon abuses, because they had that face of Obama that was behind it to make people think that, no, we were actually making progressive change when we were really just kind of doubling down on the status quo policies, of the neoliberal establishment. So you're right. But if we can somehow replicate that energy, and obviously everyone on this call believes, Bernie was able to do that. He was, because actually if Bernie would have been in office, we would have seen, he didn't have the symbolism. He didn't have the swag of Obama, but he had the substantive policies that would have actually brought forth the change we're looking for. So you're right. And as Jonah mentioned, it's like, how do we kind of pick ourselves up from really a devastating loss in 2020? Let's be real. And kind of look ahead. And especially when we're dealing with a political establishment, to Hannah's point, that is sabotaging AOC, and instead of embracing its champions and its charismatic, progressive young women, it's actively sabotaging them and primarying them, right? So it just shows you how much work we have to do. But on that note, let me just say an update. Paul Krautman just jumped ahead of Gene Shaheen. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke.
That would have been trippy, though. That would have been trippy.
That's a complete joke. But I got to sign off.
No, David, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was a real pleasure to have you, man.
Yeah, much love. Thank you for the invite. I really enjoyed speaking with everybody. So thank you very much, and we'll talk soon. All right?
Awesome. You got it. Take care, David.
Peace.
All right. So
I should probably sign off at like 9:30, something like that.
Yeah, that's actually we're gonna end the stream around 9:30 anyways, because I got some stuff. So we'll be good. So awesome, and and obviously, thank you to everybody who tuned in this evening. Please consider taking a moment to become a patron of this channel. Your support makes it possible to do research on segments like this, and set aside time and all that. So just Anyways, I do, obviously we will not be able to have like all of the results by the time this stream finishes, but I do want to point out that Walensky's closing the percentage gap a little bit. Right now he's climbed up to 47%. Earlier he was like down at like 45, 46. So as more votes come in, we're seeing him do a little bit better, which is good news, I guess. But I'm bracing for Feltus to win it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I did manage when I got my sister to vote for him. My friend and her dad, like my friend texted me that she and her dad had voted for Walensky, so I was like, yay!
Yeah.
On that,
go ahead, Jonah.
What do you think? This is more for Sherry, because you're in the State House. You're kind of working like on the ground in there. What do you think like a second or a third, Chris Sununu term would be like? What do you think we would see from him?
Exactly the same as what we've got now.
Yeah.
He's got this sort of, in a strange sort of way, I'm recalling the conversation that we just had about Obama, right? Only he's sort of doing the opposite. He has this everything I hear about Sununu, and it, like I put it in all of my tweets. Oh, he's so affable, right? He's such a nice guy, and he takes selfies in the grocery store.
He's Bobby fucking Newport. He's Bobby fucking Newport from Parks and Recreation.
But that's not what your everyday. We're in it up to our eyeballs. Your everyday sort of person who doesn't pay any attention to politics only sees these happy pictures of him at baseball games and in the grocery store and holding up cheese and
choosing a sandcastle winner with his son,
right? I mean, but they don't.
It killed me because also he has the same exact selfie face with the deadest eyes to me, so I'm like, those don't even look good to me. It's just the same expression that almost looks like he's green screened in every single one. And they're like, what cute selfies. I'm like,
really? So but what people don't understand is that behind that sort of affable public persona, his policy is terrible. Like everybody's like, oh yeah, he veto paid family leave? I'm like, yeah, twice, and once during the pandemic when y'all were unemployed and
and he stole the veto. And it's like,
yep, he raffled the first one off. That's right.
Yeah, that was a dick move. And then on top of that, the thing that sort of twists me, right, is like I was looking at like coronavirus approval numbers, and there is no way that most of that approval, like a good chunk of that approval, is not straight up Democrats in the state. Like, never mind independents, I'm sure they support it fine. Like, they're like, oh yeah, I think you did a pretty good job. I didn't get COVID-19. But even Democrats support it, and I really that is something that I genuinely worry about. That Democrats in the state will not understand that, like, oh, maybe another term of Sununu won't be so bad, like he did okay with COVID. And it's like, well, yeah, but do you want literally another 2 years of absolutely nothing happening to go down?
Yeah, I know my friends who live in Massachusetts say there's kind of a similar situation with Charlie Baker, where there's a lot of Democrats and even like people in like actually like in office who like aren't as critical of him as they should be, and who will like say nice things about him and stuff like that. And it's like he might be interpersonally nice to you, but he's still your opponent. You know, stop losing sight of that.
I'm like the last person who should probably talk about this, but there's a culture about being polite in politics, you know, and you want to maintain these sort of cordial relationships because, you know, you might need that person to be an ally on a vote at some point. I get that, but at the same time, you know, you got to call shit out.
Right.
And the hesitancy to call things what they are, I think leads a lot of people to not understand the direness of the situation. You know, we wrap pretty language around obscene things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we saw that in Peterborough with a lot of the select board issues. We saw that with them in the listening session. It's at every level of government. They do it, and it's very prevalent here in Peterborough and southern New Hampshire and all these affluent towns and such.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
it happens on every level. And I mean, and the other thing too, like that I would say to that is it's like, I call bullshit on that whole philosophy. Like, because because frankly, the reality is like there's this illusion, right? There's this like, it's like a false equivalency type of a logical fallacy that like you would not be able to build respect from people that would want to build coalition with you for standing up for things or for standing in opposition to something. Like I could equally
just being honest about the situation. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, you're taking a political risk by getting annoyed with this person in a space over a certain policy, and you might have to attack them on that. But, you know, like, doesn't that kind of violate the punch the bully in the face playground rule of like, well, if you want them to stop hitting you, then you need to hit them back? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, doesn't that logic apply to this situation kind of? Because like when I think about these people, they are certainly political bullies, right? So I would think what's my if, you know,
your counterpunch.
What's my ephemeral counterpunch? And it's like disagreeing with your idea. And that, to like, I would imagine that type of thing builds respect. And
back to like our cancel culture conversation, it's not even about like destroying the other person. It's about just having a conversation about like your opinion on the ideas and like, or like your opinions on the ideas and just the policy that you support. And from that conversation, you can build coalitions, be honest with people, and have a strong substantive dialogue in politics and in the legislature and all these levels if you just remove that air of polite society.
Yeah.
I wish that I could stay because this is a conversation that I have some experience in.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, like, because we're coming up on the end here now, so we'll probably tune out here in a minute. But I mean, you know, first off, thank you all so much for coming on this evening. This was like super delightful. Hannah, Sherry, Jonah, and then also obviously huge shout outs to David and Carlos and Robin who all stopped through. You know, I had a great time. I feel like we talked about a bunch of really cool, like I'm always trying to have these conversations with people like every day. And it's so nice to actually be talking to people that do want to have those conversations.
Yeah, definitely.
And I do hope that regardless of what the outcome is tonight, we did find out that Robin did lose by 30 votes, which like let's just
I'm heartbroken.
Yeah, that sucks. But to that though, like big ups for getting that close. 30 votes is narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's been in that seat for 40 years.
Right. That's
yeah.
It's an incredible feat. So, you know, like despite not winning, huge ups to Robin, and I intend to have him back like on the channel.
Oh, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere. So we'll see more of that guy. And then obviously again, the governor numbers keep shifting around. We won't know, but regardless of outcome, I hope that anybody who watched this feels like they have at least some tools to take away with, you know, like about how to deal with trying to argue why Feltis over Sununu, if that's what our situation is. It's obviously a lot easier for us to make the argument for Valinsky in this space, but again, we're going to have to deal with it coming up. And I'm always like, rather than, I don't necessarily believe that the best strategy is making the argument for Feltis so much as it's making the argument for why it's not okay to accept Sununu. Obviously you support your candidate, but I think there's different kinds of water that we all need to carry at different times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So that would be sort of my parting words. Anybody else have any last thoughts before we tune out here?
Don't give up. Stay in it. Stay in it.
There it is.
Don't go to brunch.
Don't go to brunch.
Don't go to brunch.
Especially if Biden becomes president.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Please.
Don't tune into that Puma shit. Don't like for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, Party Unity my ass. That was the anti-Obama Hillary group back in 2008. So just, always remember,
it's always so funny to me that there was like easily more people who did that than like the Bernie people who went to Trump or whatever, and just completely.
All right, I gotta bounce. I got a few minutes to ride home. So,
all right, y'all. Hey,
thanks,
have
y'all.
a great evening, everybody, and yeah, take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so folks, that was it. We did it. This was our primary night live stream. I hope everybody had a good time, enjoyed this. I think there's a lot of good conversation in here, and this video, whether you're watching it tonight or not, will still have value. So definitely take a moment to become a patron of the channel, as I said recently. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, hit subscribe right down there, little bell for notifications. It's good stuff. We're going to keep it going, folks. We're just going to keep doing this. Tomorrow's show is off because of this. This took time and effort to do this tonight, and I got a lot of balls to juggle, yo. So it happens. But if you become a patron of the channel, then I will have less balls to juggle, and I'll be able to sink more time into this, and we can keep having more awesome conversations. So with that, cheers, everybody, and thanks for tuning in, and thanks for getting out the vote, and thanks for just being supportive and showing the kind of solidarity that we really just we need it in our lives. So cheers. Have a good evening, guys.
It's sort of a feeling, I think, a melodic feeling, or just say a certain kind of a thing, to try to maybe show somebody something through music, even show myself something, because as I've discovered for myself, it's been a revelation to maybe reveal something to someone else through the music, something that's good, and something that they feel that maybe enriches their life